So with the whole Marvel Infinity Saga done and then moving on to entirely new phases, the MCU has been mentioning cosmic abstracts a bit more, like a lot more. So how about I make a video on one of the strongest amongst them all, and one that can make a potential appearance. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Marvel's Oblivion, True Darkness. So let's begin. Who is Oblivion? We first meet Oblivion in Iceman 1984, made by J.M. DeMatteis. Similar to the Living Tribunal's first appearance, the reasoning we meet Oblivion is because of cosmic threat. Now it's first explained who and what Oblivion is when Iceman goes back in time and fights a being named Mirage. Through this altercation, Iceman's father dies. And well, since this is in the past, that would mean Iceman was never born. And well, when you don't exist, that's Oblivion. After Iceman ceases to exist, he's transported into a non-existent void, where he meets Oblivion. Oblivion explains how this void is an aspect of his infinite being. It is then revealed who Oblivion is. Oblivion is a being who embodies non-existence, the nothingness before the multiverse and the nothingness which the multiverse sprang from. Considering Oblivion's the idea of nothingness, anything that doesn't exist becomes a part of him. And hopefully that's a good enough baseline to know what you're getting into in this video. Understanding the cosmic abstracts. The abstracts are by far one of the most important beings in Marvel, and there's a lot of them. Now I can make a whole video on who and what the abstracts are, but in summary, these guys are basically conceptual entities that represent a certain idea. For example, chaos and order represent chaos and order, or a more prominent example would be the Living Tribunal, who represents the idea of judgment within the Omniverse, or the one who stands above the ones I listed, Eternity. Eternity basically embodies the entire Omniverse. So how does Oblivion connect to any of this? Well, for one, it should be obvious he represents the idea of pure nothingness. But Oblivion also has a pretty critical relationship with the other abstracts. You get this information back in Quasar issue 25. This is when Quasar gets cosmic awareness to defeat Oblivion's henchmen. After this cosmic battle, Infinity, who's another cosmic abstract, gets mad at Oblivion. This is because Oblivion decided to give his henchmen power, which breaks the deal Oblivion made with the other abstracts. That deal being Oblivion is not allowed to directly try and destroy the multiverse. After this, they strike a new deal, and even with Quasar's cosmic awareness, he cannot comprehend what they're saying. And the form we see Oblivion have? Yeah, that one. That's not his true form. This is explained way back in Iceman, when Oblivion says this form we see is merely an aspect of his infinite being. Or in Mighty Thor Annual when he says he has to take this shape for the readers because we'll die if we see his true form. Now I want to take a step back to Iceman to see a pretty powerful thing Oblivion mentions. Like I said before, a cosmic threat named Mirage was causing wreckage on the multiverse, and Oblivion sent Iceman to go after her. Now the reason Oblivion couldn't just go get her herself is because his mere presence would affect the multiverse, or in his words, the world of forms. That reason and the deal he made is probably why he uses henchmen instead of him directly affecting reality. Okay, so Oblivion has gotten a lot of people to do his bidding across the years. First instance, Maelstrom. These two first conversate in Quasar issue 21 when Oblivion accepts Maelstrom to be his servant as long as he destroys everything. So Maelstrom decides to make a black hole that sucks in the entire universe. The Watchers, the Celestials, every life in the universe is all falling to oblivion by this black hole. But this plan is eventually stopped when Infinity gets Quasar to defeat Maelstrom like I discussed earlier. Second instance, Chaos King. Chaos King is a character I can make an entire video on revolved around him alone. And the fact that he's 1% of Oblivion's power is insane to me. Like I said, this guy really does deserve a video dedicated to him, but here's a summary of his power. When Chaos King first went to the multiverse, he was immediately considered the greatest threat it's ever seen. He killed all the gods in the Marvel universe and then made the concept of death run away. And everything he's destroying becomes a part of his power, meaning all those gods are just amplifying him. The Chaos King became virtually unstoppable. It came to a point where he obliterated 98% of the multiverse, and the one above all had to intervene because nobody could stop him. But you see, none of this was his greatest feat. His best feat comes from the fact that a being named Gaia was born from him. Gaia is the font of creation, the source of all the things the gods can do and have done. So when the gods defeat beings like Nyx at full power, she is the source of that. Okay, so the fact that the gods defeated Nyx is impressive because Nyx was a threat to all stories in Marvel, and entities like the Voyager claiming she's the most frightening creature she's ever seen. The Voyager being the same person whose job job is to constantly watch over the Omniverse. So she's definitely seen some things. We're talking about the same being who's gonna remake the Marvel multiverse from the House of Ideas, and took the combined might of House of Ideas' vision to defeat her. But even with all that power, the Chaos King was still defeated. Not because somebody was powerful enough to defeat him, but because somebody tricked him into believing the world ended, so he just stopped fighting. Third instance, Screer. After the events of Chaos War, when Chaos King was quote-unquote defeated, Oblivion had to get a new henchman to annihilate the multiverse. Screer is a being who can blink away man-thing, who's merged with the next of all realities, and merged with the fallen stars, who are divine beings that were made by God himself. You see, the plan was for Screer to collide with an entity named the Barricade, and then that would annihilate the multiverse. But they ended up making a deal at the end, and the collision never happened. But at the very end of the comic, Oblivion tells us this entire event was his plan. But you see, Oblivion doesn't care if any of his henchmen fail. Nope, not one bit. Because as Oblivion puts in Iceman, no matter who made you, where you come from, all creatures fall to oblivion. So anytime somebody that's doing his bidding fails, it doesn't affect him. Because when everything is inevitably ended, Oblivion will be there waiting. Understanding Oblivion Finale. At this part in the video, I want to take a look at Ultimates 2016. The Ultimates event begins with the new Omniverse as the previous one was erased and time runs out. Now, one big cosmological aspect in the storyline that I want to discuss is the outside. The outside is outside of everything, outside the Omniverse, any iteration of the Omniverse, time, life, death, everything. When Thanos was transported to the outside, he was immune to the retcons, the continuity changes, because it's beyond it all. Now, the connection the outside has with Oblivion is it's another aspect of his infinite being. This is because before the multiverse was the void in a singular universe, the first firmament. Then the first firmament made the first ever host of Celestials. Then the Celestials had a war which shattered the first firmament, so he went to go hide in the void, which is confirmed to be the outside. Now in Iceman, he's transported to a non-existent void that's outside of time, just like the outside, and Oblivion says that this void is his realm and he pulled it out of his infinite being. Oblivion also describes this void as the void before the multiverse which it sprang from. And if you're wondering, oh, why does he say he is the void? Well, Oblivion actually says that for all his aspects. You see, back in Iceman, Oblivion claims he is the white light and he is the idiot. He is his daughter and he is Iceman. Yet he still considers the white light and the idiot, who are his servants, and his daughter, created aspects. Just like his realm, which is the void, which is another created aspect. He even tells Iceman directly that he's just another piece of him, just like the rest. So when he says he is the void, he's not saying the void is the entirety of Oblivion. No, he's just saying it's a piece of him. Now I want to take a step back to Ultimates to see more demonstrations on Oblivion's power. You see, when the new Omniverse was brought forth, that made the cosmic hierarchy in disarray. The cosmic hierarchy is basically the hierarchy for the cosmic abstracts. The Living Tribunal's placement in the hierarchy is to judge everybody that exists in the Omniverse. Now, since the whole hierarchy was in disarray, that means everybody's placement was literally equal. So an abstract who's normally weaker than the tribunal in the hierarchy can just overpower him now because it's in disarray. And what do you know, Chaos and Order did just that. They took advantage of the disarray and killed the Living Tribunal. And keep in mind, everything that's going on right now is the abstract's true forms, as this is happening in the superflow, which is the place where concepts fight. See, normally, since abstracts are conceptual beings, they have to take physical manifestations that aren't their true forms. But here in the superflow is where combat is metaphorical and everything here is purely conceptual with no physics. Now that we got that out the way, after Chaos and Order defeat the Living Tribunal, they become the new concept of law, meaning these guys at bare minimum would basically be another Living Tribunal. They have judgment over everyone in the Omniverse, and they actually remade the hierarchy so nobody can just overpower them like they overpowered the Living Tribunal. These guys literally rewrote Lifebringer Galactus' strongest form back to his normal state. I mean, they even got the 3 heads to represent the same judgment. Now, the reason this aligns with Oblivion is because at the end of the comic, the entire Omniverse and the entire superflow is getting destroyed. And they say the only victor here would be Oblivion. Because what do you know, Oblivion's the only guy that's gonna gain from this because everybody is just falling back to him. Meaning a Living Tribunal level threat isn't safe from Oblivion either. Take Oblivion as the end of all things. A nigh omnipotent creature which has an infinite amount of power. But even with this infinite power, Oblivion has no dominion over the power of love. The power which the one above all holds, and the power which empowers and transcends both Oblivion and the multiverse. But by all means, at the end of the day, Oblivion is still a top 10 Marvel character.